What's going on, guys? Welcome into another episode of Bogey Free. I'm your host, Matt Jones. You can find me on Twitter at MattJonesTFR, and we are coming to you with some Week 10 DraftKings main slate action. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by a couple of guests this week. Unfortunately, the reigning Listener League winner, who usually joins us, Steve Holupka, is not able to be with us tonight. But we have a familiar voice in DFS. Jimmy, what's going on, man? How are we doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. And I will say that the last time that I joined your NFL podcast, I had quite a bit of success. So I'm hoping to replicate that again. A little bogey free good luck charm this week.
Got the bogey free bump going, so hopefully this transfers to all three of us. That'd be solid.
Yeah,
and also joining us tonight, we have Jeff Feinberg. You can find him on Twitter at, well, you fucking know where he's at on Twitter. It's gfeinberg17. If you have heard of me, you've definitely heard of Jeff. So what's going on tonight, Jeff?
Not too much, man. Happy to be here, ready to throw down.
All right, well, let's get after it real quick before we jump into Week 10. Do want to quickly go through the Week 9 Listener League. Like I said at the top, Steve Holupka, who is our usual co-host, took it down this week with 180 points, which is one of the higher scores for the Listener League so far this year. He went Dak and Dez, ran it back with Tyreek Hill, had some Gurley, Kamara. Like, he just hit everything, like Graham, Burton. He had Eagles D, which was just chalky, so it didn't really hurt him that they didn't go off too much. But yeah, I mean, it was good to see him finally get on the board. I got a couple wins in this 30-man that we run every week myself, so it was nice to see my co-host join me up at the top of the leaderboard one week. But we can jump right in if you guys are up for it. We can talk some quarterbacks first. Usually we start off with some cash plays. So, Jeff, I guess I'll kick it to you. Who are you starting with quarterback-wise in cash this week? Anybody really jumping out at you?
For me, in terms of quarterback, I don't know. I'm buying the hype this week as it pertains to Stafford. I think it sets up for him in a nice matchup, and I like to think that they have solved their red zone woes, and I think they're going to have a big week.
Absolutely. How about you, Jimmy?
I kind of have to get on the same train. It's a little hard to get away from Stafford. I think with Amir Abdullah just generally sucking at football and being pretty ineffective and a couple of fumbles last week, that's only going to help the pass out. Not to mention Cleveland inside between the tackles is kind of crushing it against the run. So I think Detroit's got all the incentive in the world to pass. I think they're going to get Theo Riddick a few more touches than normal and work your sort of short passing game into like a modified run game and try and get around the edge. And I think they'll be pretty successful with that. Jason McCourty may or may not be in as well, and if he's out, I think Stafford can just piece this defense apart in what should be a nice home game for Stafford. I do think that it'll be really chalky and I think he makes for some interesting stacking opportunities. We'll get into that a little bit later, but in cash, it's hard to get away from Stafford this week. It all kind of points that direction.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously the fan share tags are kind of supporting that as well. We do have the double revenge game with Jets and Bucks. Fitzpatrick and McCown are the two top tagged. I almost said golfers. I'm like still in OHL mode right now, but top tag quarterbacks rather. Are we touching those at all? Jeff, do you have any confidence in either of those guys?
Sorry, who are you about the Jets Bucks game? Yeah, McCowan. Last 3 weeks, the last month, I believe he's been near the top in the 3 of his last 4 games. There's a bit of I do actually have confidence. If I, had the rest of the lineup that warranted me starting those guys, I could think of worse options potentially. McCowan would be my lean there, though.
How about you, Jimmy?
I do love a great revenge narrative, and they both have one. So, I mean, it's almost a coin flip for me on both of them. I do give a slight bump to Fitzpatrick, mainly because of his rushing ability. He kind of has like a 20 rush yards kind of built in, I think. Doug Martin's been wholly ineffective, and Tampa Bay is a dumpster fire. It's a shame it's my home team because Dirk Cutter's totally lost these guys. But I do think that Fitzpatrick finds a little Fitz magic this week, and he's my lean. But like I said, it's a coin flip. But I do like both of these guys, and I do think that the game is going to have some fantasy relevancy this week.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where, judging by the tags, it looks like they could get pretty high owned at least for quarterbacks, as high owned as they ever get. But for me personally, I'm like, I could picture just awful games. Like, their floor is so low. At least for cash purposes, I think I'd rather just pay up for Stafford at this point, but I will absolutely, we'll get into it later, but I will absolutely have some stacks with them because, they have, 3 touchdown, 4 touchdown upside, either of them. And Fitzpatrick at 4,900, if he hits a shot or two to Djax, I think they could be in for a pretty good day. So, that being said, Jimmy, do you have any other real strong like GPP favorites this week?
Absolutely. I think there's a case to be made for going back to Goff again this week, and this Houston defense that's just hasn't lived up to the hype and has just been riddled with injuries. We saw Jacoby Brissett put up 20 points on him. I don't think that, with the weapons that Goff has and kind of how they're clicking, we could see him put up another decent game. I don't think it's anything close to what we saw last week. I mean, he was hyper efficient last week with his opportunities. I don't think it's that, but I do think he makes a good GPP play this week. The other one there's two that really stick out to me. One is Dak Prescott with the news that Zeke is going to be out now. The suspension's been upheld, and who the hell knows? That could go back and forth 3 or 4 times. Again, I know Mayo got so frustrated last week having to update his ranks and everything with Zeke in, Zeke out, Zeke in, Zeke out. So if he stays out, I think Dak Prescott makes a phenomenal GPP play, and I think the guy to stack him with, depending on Dez or Terrence, is going to be what's his name, Butler. He's been pretty comfortable putting some bombs out to him. So I think those guys make some pretty interesting GPP plays, and it's hard to get away from Roethlisberger as well against Indy. Indy's produced a couple of millionaire maker teams so far this year, and Ben's kind of due a little bit.
Yeah, I think being on the fast track there in Indy, I'm not too concerned about the home road splits with Ben. I think that defense neutralizes any sort of hesitancy about playing Ben on the road. Yeah. India's allowed six opponents this year to beat their implied total, so I'm not too concerned about that defense. Jeff, do you have any other GPP favorites this week that you'll be targeting at quarterback?
Matt Ryan kind of has my attention this week. I think it's going to be a big game for them at home, sort of that 4:00 national spot. I'm looking for Atlanta to score, in that 34-point range. So I'm really high on Ryan this week and what I think he's going to do. And finally, I know a lot of people have been waiting for them to sort of break out as a whole, but I think Ryan's going to get off the mat in a big way.
I can dig it.
I agree with that. I'm definitely going to have a lot of him and Julio this weekend. Outside of that, I'm trying to sort of narrow my pool to basically that this week. I don't really see a ton that's getting me super excited. I'll spread it out a little bit in GPPs, but for the most part, I think you can limit yourself to those guys and sort of differentiate elsewhere. So as we keep going through for running backs this week, sort of going back to the Pittsburgh-Indy game, we have Le'Veon Bell at 9,800 this week. Jimmy, is that price scaring you off, or do you think it's warranted?
It's Le'Veon Bell, and it's Indianapolis. It depends. So my only hesitation, and this is even a slight hesitation because I'm playing Bell, and I'm going to be playing quite a bit of Bell in GPPs. My only hesitation is that to this point in the year, Tomlin and Ben just have not given the receptions to Bell they have in the past couple of years. So I would really like to see his receptions like 2 or 3 more per game. that would make me feel a little more comfortable in his just overall upside. But it's fucking Indy, man, and it's Le'Veon Bell. Just don't get too cute with it. Play the Steelers, skill position guys, and print money.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that. I'm not afraid of that price. The Colts. This could just be a track meet sort of day for him, where there's at least one big break off, and they've been really bad against backs receiving the ball. So if there is a game that Tomlin's finally going to call for a couple plays for Bell to get those receiving touches that we hope he gets, this would be it. My numbers show they're the second worst team against backs catching the ball. So this would be the time for Bell to break out in all folds. I'm not afraid of this price. I think you'd be silly to try to be contrarian and avoid him.
Yeah, I don't. There's not a great case to be made against him. Just based on the opportunity that he gets in a bad matchup, he's a good play even at that price. So with this matchup, I think that makes sense. Are we going back to the well, Jeff, with Todd Gurley this week?
Gurley would be a very fine. They're leading the league in points per game. They're having a lot of fun over there. It wouldn't. I'm expecting another big game there. They're averaging 30 plus. I think Gurley's going to do what he's been doing all season. That would sort of be my expectation in this one.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting just the way that that a team can change from year to year, right? I mean, the Rams have this year they've covered the spread by themselves 3 times, like without even factoring in their opponent's point total. So they're definitely flying around. So I can get on board with that. Jimmy, if there's no picture day this week in Jacksonville, are you going to play Leonard Fournette or what's going on there?
Yeah, I think I've heard both sides of the Fournette argument with his tendency to rely on the big breakout run and etc. We have seen Chris Ivory get a little more involved. Just generally speaking in the offense, whether he's there or not, that's a bit concerning, just those two things. But I think we've also seen that Leonard Fournette sort of has a propensity to break those big runs. And I think it has a lot to do with the way the defense plays Jacksonville. They know that they're going to run. They're not afraid of Bortles. They're not afraid of the receivers. But once he breaks one, he's gone because there's nobody back. It's 8-man boxes. And once he breaks an 8-man box with that line, he's just gone. And I don't think it's out of the question to see another one of those this week. It is the way to beat the Chargers. My concern is, and as Jeff alluded to earlier with Pat and his show, is forgive me, Jeff, I forget the name, but they do have a middle linebacker run stopper back into the defense that should shore up that hole that the Chargers have kind of had all year with the run. So that does concern me a bit, but they're going to feed Fournette, and I think you can play him pretty comfortably. He has a nice discount as well.
You can play him comfortably, coming from a Charger fan. Yeah, Perryman's back. That I just want to put that out there to say that statistically, I think they might be in the bottom 2 in run defense. That will be stuck in the first half of the year. Not to say Fournette isn't worth a play this year, but the Chargers as a run defense as a whole, they will improve drastically. Not to say they're going to be like a top 5 unit, but they are no longer a unit I think you can look to pick on with running backs. That being said, Fournette is a special breed of them, and Gus Bradley, they play a very well in Jacksonville, but they play he calls a very aggressive scheme, and like you said, and like I get burned on in Madden plenty of times, that engage 8 all out blitz, and then that guy breaks the line and it's a 60-yard carry. So I wouldn't be past it. He's also going to be the primary horse in the red zone, where the Chargers don't really do a great job, I feel, outside of that last game versus the Patriots. Teams have been able to find the end zone. He's not going to have a bad game. I know that much. He'll take care of his own, and I think the game flow will dictate he'll be part of it, because I'm expecting, like most Charger games, this one to be a 4-quarter tight football game.
Yeah, for sure. And then outside of that, sort of, we have, I guess you could take sort of the next 4 really and try to differentiate somehow. We have McCoy, Ingram, Gordon, and Kamara. Is there anybody who's really jumping out to you, Jeff, out of that range before we get into some cheaper plays?
I'm tempted to say Kamara out of that group. I'm not expecting a big game from Melvin Gordon this week. So I would try to pick it. For me, it would be McCoy or Kamara, and coincidentally, they're out of the exact same contest.
Yeah, for sure. Jimmy, do you have any conviction on between those four?
I don't have conviction for anybody there, but I do have conviction against Kamara, and it has everything to do with the field and the fact that it's outside. The guy is undersized for the position. He has to rely on the pass, which I do think he'll probably get a couple more looks, but his speed's going to be taken away a little bit, and that's where he does his damage. And I just think that maybe that caps his upside a little bit. I don't know, maybe he can't break one, but I do think that people are going to kind of pile on Kamara because of last week's game, and I'll just take the other side of that, given that it's in the Ralph, and that Buffalo's got
a pretty Bills
nice
are my super lock this week, for what that's worth. I'm expecting New Orleans, like a lot of teams, going into the Ralph, having things just not go their way, having their momentum stall out a little, is my overall expectation for New Orleans.
Yeah, I can get on board with that too. I mean, it's obviously a tough place to play. Yeah, I mean the price jump, the projected ownership on Kamara, I'm a little hesitant this week, just for what I usually look for. Somebody who is interesting me a little bit, at 6,100, we have Jordan Howard. Now, I know that offense is not anything that you're like over the moon about, but they're playing Green Bay at home. I mean, they're favored. Like it seems like he's just going to get 35 carries, right? Like they don't want Trubisky to throw the ball. They really don't want anybody else to touch the ball except for him and maybe some Cohen. Jeff, are you in at all on my boy Jordan Howard this week?
Not against it, but there's a couple guys that have caught my eye sort of a little farther down the running back board.
Okay, that's fair. Who do you got? Where are we saving?
Specifically, they're from the same game. I like both Hyde and Darkwa. I hope I'm pronouncing that one right. In that game, I think there's an opportunity for both of them. Darkwa's had his touches have been pretty solid so long as he can stay healthy. I think if the game is close, which I think most people are expecting it to be, both of them are going to get a really heavy load. And those are two guys that I'm looking to complement a few of my lineups this week.
How about you, Jimmy? Where are you paying down?
Well, first of all, I'm going to be all in on Jordan Howard this week. Trubisky is – we don't even know if Trubisky's good at football, but we know John Fox is a terrible coach, and I don't even think he's interested in winning. John Fox sucks. So just they're gonna feed him. It seems like they phased Cohen out of the offense entirely, which is sort of crazy to me because he is an athletic freak, and you could do some interesting things with him, but they seem to just be intent on feeding him. There is a true home field advantage up there in Soldier Field. Brett Hundley is terrible. I think that there's a pretty good case to be made with some short fields are going to be had by Chicago, and I think that especially on FanDuel, Jordan Howard, I can see why on DraftKings you'd maybe want to get away from him because he doesn't catch as many passes as we'd like. But on FanDuel, I think Jordan Howard is a lock for me this week. I am cautiously optimistic about Orleans Darkwa in my adjusted rush yards this week. He has the best matchup. They're projected for an adjusted rush yards as a team of 135.7. That's the best in my projections for adjusted rush yards. My concern is that Ben McAdoo is a worse coach than John Fox, and we could see like Shane Vereen snaking like 9 snaps from him if they get behind.
And even Gallman had almost 9 last week as well. Is a bit of a concern there, but
yeah, my only concern is the timeshare. I think he makes a better cash play than he does a GPP play. The time split sort of breaks up his upside and sort of caps it, in my opinion. So I consider him in cash. I probably won't go to Orleans in GPPs. But
are either of you guys afraid that Cohen's going to be the one that just sort of has that 60-yard difference maker?
I'm not even sure Cohen's touched the ball the last 2 games. Also, John Fox is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's
it's a legit concern though.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that chance, right? I mean, even a few weeks ago when they had the game against Carolina, where they just the defense scored every point practically. You do lose some upside from that, but I just think his floor is reasonable, just based on the volume that Howard's going to see. So, I don't know. I think there's definitely a case to be made. I love Darkwa this week. I'm a Giants fan, and I'm probably like the most negative person right now on the Giants, but I still think Darkwa is a good play. And I still think Engram's a great play, which we'll get to shortly. For how I sort of rank everything, San Francisco has been the worst against running backs. And they've been playing close games regardless of who they play. So I think that if this game stays close and the Giants can avoid throwing as much as they kind of need to, because they don't have any wide receivers outside of Shepard, I think Darkwa makes a ton of sense this week. Are there any other like total punt plays? I mean, it looks like Forte missed practice today. So is Powell in play at 4K this week for either of you?
Not yet, but
yeah.
I could see it. I mean,
if Forte's out, is he's not just an automatic lock?
If Forte's out, yeah, I'm playing him. I mean, he and McGuire are going to split snaps. It's probably going to be 65-35, 70-30 in terms of snaps. And Bilal Powell's got the pass catching upside. Tampa Bay is a shell of a team at this point. Dirk Cutter has lost the locker room, I think, to some degree. If they get any motivation, it's going to be from Fitzpatrick. So yeah, I'm in on Powell if Forte is out, but that's only if he's out. If he plays, then I don't want any part of any of them.
Yeah, it's a total mess if he plays. What are you thinking there, Jeff?
Yeah, I know everything you just said. I mean, it all lines up if Buddy's not going to play, if Forte's not going to play, especially you said against the pass. And the Jets, they compete. So this could be this guy. If Tampa doesn't want to show up again, anything could get ugly. So if Forte doesn't play, he'll be in a lot of lineups.
Yeah, for sure. I do think we'd be remiss to mention the Dallas situation. So obviously, if you're listening to this, you've heard that Zeke is suspended. There's no chance that he plays this Sunday, regardless of what happens legally. I guess they're scheduled for December 1st. So he's at least going to miss this week at the very, very least. So, we don't have a ton of clarity, but it seems like Alf is going to be the guy, and he's at 5,500 this week. DraftKings has done a better job of pricing up some of these backups so that when things like this happen, it's not just an automatic like 3K play. But we also, we have Darren McFadden, who really hasn't, I don't even know if he's been active yet, at 5,100. And then we have Rod Smith all the way down at 3,400. So, Jeff, are you touching any of these Dallas running backs, or are you more in on the passing game for Dallas?
I could be. I'll tell you what. McFadden, absolutely not. A lot of the real sharp Cowboy insiders are talking about Smith's ceiling if Morris doesn't get off the mat like people want. I'm not afraid of Morris just yet, though. What do you think is a fair? If he can stay on the field and if he does enough to earn the snaps, what percentage of Elliott's points is he able to get? 70, 75?
Yeah, I was thinking 70.
Yeah, that's still pretty good. I'm hopeful because outside of DK, I own Morris in a few places, so I'm hopeful he gets it. But if he starts slow, my total understanding is they'll get it to Smith, and he could be a firecracker here and keep Morris, very much on the sidelines. And his presence is, by all accounts, going to staple McFadden to the sideline.
Yeah, I think that's
with
probably
Elliott there has been the RB4, so you almost wonder like why he's even done anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the scariest part. I mean, like you just mentioned, like, season long. I haven't been season long too, and I'm talking about, and I'm like, geez, I mean, this could be like an unbelievable, coming out party, and this could be really valuable, or this could just go.
Or it could be like they go 3 and out or something, or they run 8 plays on their first 2 series on Sunday, and then this Smith catches something, and then it's all him.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm picturing in my head. I'm like, once they get out of the scripted plays to start the game, if he hasn't done anything yet, they're gonna work Smith in. Like I think it was the running back coach this week came out and said like they view Smith as a potential 3-down back. Like they have no problem with playing him if assuming that Alf isn't getting started right away.
Someone that's got his fingers crossed for Alf. You just as long as that O-line is healthy, there should be a couple lanes that he should be able to pick from. That's always the knock on, as great as Elliott is, it looks like he's got freeways to run through. So hopefully Alf just doesn't screw it up. But I'm not ready to put any DK money on him just yet.
Yeah. How about you, Jimmy? What are you thinking there?
Rod motherfucking Smith. That's it. Listen, Alfred Morris is not a good football player. We've known that for some time. I shouldn't say he's not a good football player. He's a mediocre football player, but I think he has every opportunity to disappoint. He's going to be coming in cold. They've used Rod Smith sparingly. They've swapped him in and out in some situations. They passed the ball to Rod Smith. I can see if you're playing FanDuel that you want to lock in Morris, and that's fine because he's probably going to get the goal line work. Rod Smith is an all-around better player, in my opinion. He's going to get some passing work, so his floor on DraftKings is better, and I think his ceiling is better for all the reasons that Jeff said. I think if Alf Morris comes out cold and he disappoints in the first drive, I think they're the entire Cowboys staff, as bad as their head coach can be and just find ways to screw up games. I don't think that they are going to miss out on the opportunity to yank Morris and put Rod Smith right in there. I think they want to play Smith. I think that's the guy that they want to just turn over the reins to as a direct backup. McFadden, there's a pretty good chance if McFadden gets the ball, he gets hurt in like the second time he touches it. So if I'm playing anybody, I'm taking all the savings with all the upside, and I'm going Rod Smith and GPPs, and I'm not touching any of them in cash.
Yeah, and I honestly, from my point of view, just to put it in perspective, I feel like for me, I wouldn't be surprised if Alf is next week or like 4,600 next week. So I think it can go either way. And I'm not in a position where I feel like I need to play him because I mean, if he was 4,500 right now or 4K, we'd be having a different conversation probably. But at his price, I think it's a little too expensive for me.
You know what? If Rod Smith comes out here and does what the Cowboys want him to do, Alf Morris could be on the fucking practice squad next week.
You know what this could be like, and it may be a much smaller sample to an extent. When Cook went down, people were liking Latavius because he was getting the first shot. But my initial reaction was, there's no way full season McKinnon is 100% the guy to own. Speaking to anybody in and around Dallas, whether it be fans or the prognosticators in and around there close to the team, they seem to think by week 14, 15, 16, it very likely could be Smith's job by then. So I don't know. There could be some similarities there. Just because Morris is going to get the first shot at first and goal doesn't mean he's going to be the man standing.
Right.
But I'm hoping he is selfishly.
Yeah. Oh, great point. Me too. I'm fully on board with that. I'm actively trying to move him everywhere in season long, just on the like shiny new toy, hoping that somebody overpays for him. So that's where I'm at right now.
First chance to be the guy that's going to carry the load for the Cowboys has value. That's an asset.
Yeah,
he might not be an asset at 6:00 Eastern on Sunday, but right now he's an asset.
That's what I told my buddy today. The Zeke owner in my league. I was like, the price may be way higher next week, and then I was like, but it also could be like way lower. So depends on your risk tolerance, I guess. But all right, I think we're good on running backs. Unless either of you have anybody else to throw in there.
Not really. No.
Carlos Hyde.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, actually, before we move on, I want to get you guys' take on Devonta Freeman.
Oh shit! Yeah, totally forgot about him. So, me personally, I think that this is like a potential get right spot for him. I think his sort of volume hasn't been there like we've noticed, but I think this is a week where they can get back to what they did well last year. Jeff mentioned it earlier. He, thinking that the offense clicks a little bit more and Ryan has a good game. If that comes to fruition and there's any sort of dysfunction on the Dallas side, I think that that they could get up a touchdown and Freeman could really eat a little bit here. What are your thoughts on Freeman, Jeff?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off my thoughts earlier as it pertained to Ryan. I think they're scoring 34 points. I think this is a really good spot for Atlanta, desperate not to fall into a losing record. Dallas got a nice win last week. Not to say they won't be super motivated because to prove they can do it without Elliott. But defensively, I think this is finally a chance. Atlanta's going to just click. I'm expecting them to click 30-plus points from the offense, which means Freeman will get his.
Absolutely. Okay. That's strong enough for you, Jimmy? You're on board now? You're on board with Devontae?
I just kind of want to get the pulse. I like Devontae this week, too. I agree with everything both of you guys said. So, I'll be playing some of them. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't, crazy or out on a limb by myself.
All right, so as we shoot over to wide receivers, we have it's interesting because there's quite a gap between Antonio and Julio this week. So Antonio Brown is priced all the way up at 9,500, and Julio's down at 8K even. This is, same question as Bell before. I guess I'll start with you, Jeff. Does the price scare you at all for Antonio this week, or are we just like full Pittsburgh onslaught?
Here's the thing. I believe it is setting up for the full onslaught. I believe, him and Brown set up to be both the top fantasy threats. They're coming off, I believe, their bye. I don't think Indy's got a starter. There are some cheaper options I feel I could supplement it with a bit, maybe in the other wide receiver spot. I'm not afraid of Brown at all. I'm happy to roster him. I'm happy to pay the price, but it's kind of been a theme through all the positions that I don't know. I'm sort of a sucker for what I think the ceiling is for the Falcons this weekend. So I really like both of them. For the purposes of this, I'll pick Julio Jones, trying to catch fire there, but I'm expecting Brown to do what he does.
How about you, Jimmy?
You got to have exposure. He's probably not a cash play because he's so expensive, but if you're playing GPPs and you're playing more than one lineup, you need to have him in it. And the other lineup you have, if you're only playing two, probably needs to have Bell in it. But the Indy gives up, I think, the most or second most passes over 20 yards this week. Brown is an absolute animal. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL, and it's not close. He's healthy. I think people are going to be enamored with the Smith-Schuster thing. You've got Bryant coming back, supposedly. Whatever. I doubt Tomlin gives Bryant much run anyway. The guy totally disrespected the players, the organization, the whole 9 yards. So I don't think they have a lot of incentive to get him any run. I think your deep threat is going to be Brown. I think Eli Rogers is probably still going to play out of the slot a little bit. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they release Vontae Davis this week or no?
Yeah, they did. He elected surgery. He had words with Pagano, and they just cut him. So he's gone. Even if he was still on the team this week, that groin injury was going to keep him out regardless. So there was no way he was playing. And even with him, I think this was still like a smash spot. So I don't even think it matters. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to see how people, and I guess we'll get to some cheap wide receiver options and some cheap tight ends, hopefully. but I just threw it in real quick. Like, if you play the 3Bs and you just punt completely and go Browns defense, you only have 4,400 left. Like, they're wildly expensive. Like, Ben is all the way up at 6,600, and then you have 95 and 9,800. So it's going to be interesting to see if, I don't know, it's going to be tough to fit those guys in.
I'll put it this way. I firmly believe that one of the Bs is going to be in the winning lineup in a bunch of GPPs this week. I don't know which one. You need to have exposure to both. You could probably get away with not playing Ben if you don't want to, but Brown or Bell is going to win somebody at GPP this week, and you need to be there.
Yeah. As we keep going down, Jeff, we have AJ Green, Hopkins, Evans is out. Michael Thomas, in that like sort of 7K range, a little bit cheaper. I mean, do you think AJ has sort of healed from the ass whooping that Ramsey put on him last week, or
yeah, I think
what's going on there?
I'm expecting a big game for him, and it's setting up well because I don't think the Titans can cover anyone as talented as him or anyone half as talented as him. The Titans really have a hard time covering guys. So I'm expecting AJ to show, listen, you don't throw a punch in the first quarter of a game. You know exactly what's happening. He kind of checked out, and that's very out of character for him. So I think he'll probably show up, and at least his stat line will, in his mind, maybe answer some of the critics. But even going a little farther down, man, I'm sure he's going to be popular, but how do you not just stare at Marvin Jones and the targets, 14, 11 targets his last 3 games, him or Golden Tate. I mentioned off the top with Stafford, I would want to pair him with at least one of these guys. I really would.
Yeah, absolutely. You're looking at a defense who's, let the opponent go over 5 times already this year. In Cleveland, it's just how could you not go after that? Jimmy, what are you thinking in this sort of 6K and up range?
So I agree with Jeff on Green, by the way. In the 6K range, I think one of the 2 Minnesota guys is probably going to be the contrarian option in GPPs. I don't know which one it is yet. It's largely going to depend on who plays out of the slot for me. But we'll get a little more clarity on that as it comes down. I think that I will let all the people that want to chase Hilton pay the rake this week, and all the people that want to chase Smith-Schuster pay the rake. And I'm actually really digging Keenan Allen and Sterling Shepard this week.
Really?
Yeah, I'm fully in on Keenan this week. I think working out of the slot, I think he's going to be okay this week. He could get like 9 catches, even if it's for like 50 yards or whatever. He's going to have so many targets there. I really do like Keenan a lot. I am fully with you on TY. Like, I am not going anywhere near him this week. Jeff, are you in agreement there? Is that just a complete fade for TY?
Yeah, I want no part of it. I just see there's too many other receivers that I'm interested in. I don't even it's not even about knocking TY. I just like other guys. I see better opportunities. I'm more confident in banking points other places for the same money, even cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's been pretty predictable the weeks that TY has really flashed, and this is clearly not one of those weeks in this matchup.
He also popped up on the injury report with a soft tissue injury today,
which is just so uncharacteristic of him. It's a real shame. But yeah, I mean, so Jimmy, you're completely off Juju. What about you, Jeff? Any love for Juju?
I'm a sucker for Juju.
Me too.
I think they're all gonna play a role. I think there's an opportunity for everybody to go off, and if Juju's the one on those winning GPP lineups, that wouldn't shock me all that much either. Really wouldn't.
Fair point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could go pretty cheap and like a lineup with 3 out of like Keenan, Shepard, Juju, and Marvin Jones. Like, I'm not mad at that at all. I think that's a solid wide receiver core that you can build around. As we keep going, I mean, it's so tempting to play Jordy Nelson because he's 5,300, but Hundley is so goddamn bad. Like, I don't know, Jeff. Can you talk yourself into it at 5,300?
No, because the floor. I just see the floor.
Yeah,
the floor scares me too much. It's unfortunate, and someone out there's got bigger balls than me might want to pull that off, but I'm afraid of the floor.
Yeah, it's tough. That's a rough one with the way that Hundley looked the other night. Jimmy, how about you? Are you interested in any Green Bay wide receivers?
No.
Yeah.
No,
it's bad, right? It's bad.
It's bad. I was actually really, really shocked. I'm not a huge believer in McCarthy to start with, but I was really shocked at the lack of game plan they had to attack Detroit. We know what Detroit is. We know where you can beat Detroit. It's in short passing over the middle. They have a nasty pass rush, but they do have a beatable secondary. It is encouraging that Jordy got more targets. Just the offense in general had a little more targets, but McCarthy is – it's cliche, but I do think McCarthy is a bit of a product of the quarterbacks he's had, and when that doesn't work out, they don't have a good offensive line. Chicago has a good pass rush. He's going to be under pressure. He's not going to be able to get the ball to Jordy in any meaningful capacity, so I'm out on it. Somebody else can take that. I have him in my season-long leagues, and I've been trying to figure out a way to get rid of his ass because I don't think Rodgers comes back this year because they're not going to make the playoffs because the only reason they make the playoffs every year is because of Rodgers. So Green Bay is right up there with the New York Giants and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for me. Just I'll take better plays elsewhere. I do think that right below Jordy, though, Mohamed Sanu is probably the most interesting option for me. He's got a nice floor for cash. They're in a high total game. They're on a high implied team total or team with a. He's on a team with a high implied team total. So I think Mohamed Sanu is a great play right there at 5,100. Julio has a lower leg injury, whatever the hell that means. I've heard it's a high ankle. I've heard it's a calf injury. I don't think anybody has any clear answer on what his injury actually is. But if you listen to Raybon and the 4for4 guys, a lower extremity, a lower leg issue results in an on average 11% reduction in total fantasy points production. Julio hasn't been lighting the world on fire so far this year, so I do think that if Atlanta gets to the number that Jeff thinks they do and that Vegas thinks they do, it's going to come on the heels of Julio early for half of the game, and he'll probably end up sitting out several drives, which will feed several more targets to Sanu, and it'll probably feed a bomb or two to a random guy, Tyler Gabriel, or Justin Hardy or something like that. So I like Sanu right down there, and I think his ownership's not going to get out of control for GPPs. And if for some reason Julio doesn't go or Julio ends up injured halfway through the game and out, I think that just bumps up the ceiling for Sanu, and he'll probably get an extra red zone target or two. So that's probably where I'm going in this range right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, did you have something to add there?
It's just everyone in Green Bay is living off Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Everybody from Dom Capers to the coach to Ted Thompson, everybody. That's it. So there's no point in really breaking that down.
Yeah.
No, it's a joke. It's a joke. Obviously, anyone who loses their quarterback is going to regress, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or the 15th best quarterback in the league. But they've never done enough, and they've been cheap. They've been cheap in how they've supplanted that roster. And Aaron Rodgers is covered up for all of it. But they'd all be out of a job. You think Dom Capers has avoided any criticism because they win enough games. The whole thing there stinks. That's all.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
This is one of those weeks where I think just continuing down this wide receiver list, it's almost scary how many plays I still like as I keep scrolling down at this point. I don't know. We have the Rams receivers down here as well. I called for a Sammy week last week, and he bailed me out with that one fucking catch. But other than that, he's been largely ignorable. But we do have Robert Woods has seen a ton of volume, and so is Cooper Kupp. Are we interested at all in these guys? Jeff, are you interested in these guys in cash? Just GPPs? Not at all. What are you thinking?
If I'm going farther down, I got some other guys. I know you mentioned Shepard, but opposite him, I think like Tavares King, and even in that really ugly game, a guy like Marquise Goodwin. And I guess in and around that range, I wrote down Bryce Butler.
Oh yeah,
so,
it could
the
turn
cheapo,
into Bryce Butler week for sure.
Yeah, those are some of the cheapo chumpos that I've been looking at. Bryce Harper, Bryce Harper. Butler more specifically, and King, because as you mentioned, you like Shepard, and for good reason. But someone's got to play across, so maybe there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean
he caught a touchdown last week.
Yeah, he's shown. I mean, he's sort of like a preseason GOAT. He's like he's
and
done
then you
well.
Gotta consider, I guess, when playing, I guess the Giants as a whole, it's these like total unknown guys that you assume are the guys that can't quit. You know, because there's a lot of talk in New York that guys are quitting. And yes, if you have a reputation, you have a contract, or, if you're a player that someone's going to want, maybe you can quit if you're a veteran or feel that you could, which you can't, which you shouldn't. But it's these like really unknown guys that there's no way a guy like Tavares King is quitting.
Yeah, that's he 3 weeks ago he was on his couch. Point. Yeah.
Because I'm afraid, like, for betting the Giants as a team, I'm afraid they've quit. But particular, there's certain situations where there's just no way certain guys are quitting. There's just no way, and this is one of them. I'm not saying he's good. I don't know how good or bad he is, but he's not quitting.
That's like I said, I think he's flashed in the past. He's he just came back. He was on the roster last year. Preseason guy, flashed on a bunch of deep balls. Has like a. I mean, for the wide receiver core, has a reasonable sort of rapport with Eli, just based on what I've seen. I watch every Giants game as a sort of masochist fan of the Giants at this point. But I'm not mad at that at all, especially in GPPs. I mean, he can at 3,200, he can pay off super quick. 1 or 2 catches and he's off to the races. The other guy, like super cheap, that I really like this week would be Adam Humphries, 3,100. I'm hoping this is one of those, like, I know that everybody else knows, but I wish nobody else knew. You know what I mean? Like, this is just a lock for me. Like, he's going to be in any of my cash lineups that include this game. He's going to be in there because 3,100 is ridiculous for what the volume that he's going to see. Is there any reason for either of you to fade him?
None here. Big games. His target count has been solid, so I would expect that to rise, and an opportunity for a game that's going to be worth 3-4 times his cost.
How about you, Jimmy?
Same. Adam Humphries is sort of my lock for the week in terms of any of my cash games and probably many of my tournament teams. He's seen on average 5 targets a week, 3 receptions, 40 yards. I expect, just like Jeff said, those to go up. Like I said, if this team is going to get any kind of inspiration, it is not coming from Dirk Cutter. It's coming from Ryan Fitzpatrick on the field, making things happen. And Adam Humphries is a gritty gamer type of guy, just like Jeff mentioned. I think that's an excellent point, Jeff, with, maybe the team has quit, but there are guys that are not quitting. Adam Humphries is one of those guys that's not quitting. He's going to be that short route receiver. I think we could probably see 3 to 4 targets more than average. And who knows? New Jersey or New York has been susceptible to being beat. It's not out of the question that he gets into the end zone or he takes one from like the 30 across the middle of the field and finds a way to get it into the box. So Adam Humphries is pretty much a cash lock, and you should have pretty good exposure to him in GPPs as well.
Yeah, for sure. Jeff, did we miss any wide receivers, or are you good to move on to tight ends?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I mentioned the cheap guys that sort of had my eye, and Humphries is a nice add as well.
How about you, Jimmy? All good?
Aldrick Robinson might be my only one that we didn't mention, and we don't need to say a whole lot about him. Adam Levitan does plenty of that for the industry, and Lord Aldrick. So, but this San Francisco New York Giants game, I think, is a really sneaky spot to stack in general. Either side of the ball, and almost anybody you want. You can fit them all in. They're all cheap, and you can stack up either side of this ball in a game that has the potential to shoot out. So just in general, a guy like Aldrick Robinson could pay off his salary with one catch.
And that's the perfect segue for my boy Evan Ingram. So all of you rookie tight end haters can back the hell up, all right? Because Evan Ingram is the real deal. And I would argue that all these injuries in the Giants wide receiver core is probably the best thing that could have ever happened for Evan Ingram this year.
Oh, for sure.
It was Go ahead.
No, just to interrupt, but 10 targets his last 2 games. He's clearly comfortable with Eli. Again, he's a rookie. He ain't quitting. Like, he's just not. The Niners lost both their starting safeties. This is big. I'm gonna have Ingram in a lot of places. I'm gonna be really dependent on him, and if I'm gonna win any real money, it's gonna be counting on him in a big way, because he's gonna be all over the board. Everything between the injuries on the 49ers, the injuries on the Giants, this is an easy start.
Yeah, for sure. Even at the price, he jumped up, I think $600 this week. Doesn't even matter. I think it's crazy just as a Giants fan to see what he's potentially capable of, like when Odell comes back and everything else. I'm excited for what the offense can be when we finally get rid of Eli. But so Evan Ingram's firmly in play. Jimmy, what about Jack Doyle? If we go down, there's a $1,400 or $1,000 gap between these two guys. Like, are you in on Jack Doyle as well with his potential target share?
I am, but before we get too far, I just want to jump on board with you guys. I made one note, and the first note that I made on my sheet that I just graph paper and hand notes, folks. The first note I made this week: San Francisco loses good safeties for stopping tight ends. Draw an arrow. Ingram is elite. So don't get cute with it. Pay the price. I think he'll probably come in slightly lower owned than what people have him projected because of the price and because of how tight pricing is. So, I love Ingram. I also love Doyle. I think Doyle's an interesting pivot because people are going to be piling on to Hilton and what they expect, for Indy to be playing from behind, and they want the deep ball threat. But really, I think the way to beat this nasty, what I think is a pretty nasty Pittsburgh defense is, the short underneath routes with Doyle. And I could see another game where Doyle gets 12, 13 targets, 100 yards, or approaching the 100 yards, and he gets into the box. Indy's found a way to keep some of their games close that they really shouldn't have, and they've done it on the back of basically 2 players, Doyle and Hilton. And I don't think it's a Hilton week, so that by default makes it a Doyle week. And I don't think you can go terribly wrong with his floor there. His ceiling might be a little bit capped, but I think he has a really great floor for cash, and it is nice savings.
Yeah, honestly, I typically don't build lineups before tonight, but I was just sort of playing around with it, and I'm not like completely opposed to just throwing both of them in and just flexing one of them in your cash lineup. I think that gives you such a great target floor compared to, similarly priced options at wide receiver or running back. I think it could be somewhat viable to have 2 tight ends in your lineups this week. But if we go down a little bit cheaper, I guess I'm assuming that Austin Seferian-Jenkins is going to get another touchdown called back this week. So I don't know if that's the best play in the world. But do you have any conviction on some of these cheaper options down here, Jeff?
There's a couple I like. One's going to be a familiar theme for me. Hooper. Again, I just think Atlanta, it's all going to just set up for Atlanta this week. And a funny little side plot that's broken up to this game. It's got nothing to do with any of this. Just for football fans, is this battle that's now brewing between the 2 owners of these 2 teams, and a lot of jargon going on. So that makes this game even more exciting. But I like Austin Hooper, and if anyone knows me, I try to avoid, because I am wired a certain way, but I am a Hunter Henry truther, and he was completely held off the stat sheet in New England last game. And I'll tell you what, that wasn't a coincidence. To me, that tells me how good Hunter Henry is, and I'll tell you why. Because that's what Bill Belichick did. Bill Belichick said, "I'm taking Hunter Henry away." and he's good at it. And I went to an AFC Championship game in that building where he took Gates away, and every time we played them, he took Gates away. He's just good at it. He knows who your best option is, in his opinion, and he takes him away. So that makes me believe that much more in Hunter Henry, because that's who Bill Belichick decided he's going to take away. Jaguars do a lot of things well, not so much against the tight end. I think I'm expecting a lot of big second-half games from Henry for the Chargers, and it starts here at a cheap price, and people have kind of soured on him because there have been donuts, but this will not be one of them. Will not be.
Love it. I love that take.
How about you, Jimmy? Who are you paying down for at tight end?
Well, I mean, I like Hunter Henry this week, and I will have some exposure to him. But I'm not going to go into the rant. But I agree wholeheartedly with Jeff. If Belichick believes he's the most important part of your offense, that says something. Hunter Henry is incredibly talented, and you should have some exposure to him. But I do think that if you're going to get down below the top two guys this week, it is a bit wide open, and I think that there are some really interesting plays. Kyle Rudolph is due for some touchdown regression. Yes. Washington is not really great against the tight ends. He's not going to be heavily owned. I think he makes an excellent tournament play. He could get into the box twice this week. The other one is Eric Ebron and David Njoku in the same game. Detroit is not great against the tight ends. It's probably their weakest part of their defense, and I think that you could see David Njoku in a bit of a get-right game. The problem is it could easily be Seth DeValve as well. They're both pretty talented. Njoku is getting a little more of the work. So I do like him as a really contrarian play if you're like stacking up that game. I think Njoku is a nice one to run it back with. But Eric Ebron is intriguing to me. We saw him get a little bit more use as of late. They were trying to trade him. It didn't really work out. And, if you have a flow chart for tight ends against, bad defenses, Cleveland is certainly one of them. It seems like statistically he'd be a lock to score a touchdown this week. And at 3,100, he presents pretty good value as well. So those are a couple of the, kind of off the board tight ends that I like this week.
And can we all just agree that we're not playing Garrett Selleck, even though that seems to be a thing? Or are we on him? Okay, good. Because that's
0% here.
Yeah, that's wild.
None for me either. I mean, I get it. I get why people are intrigued by it, but I'm not going to have any of them.
Yeah.
He's the kind of guy that blows up your perfect lineup.
Right, exactly. 100%. Besides that, also, we should mention Brait at 4,100. He is the highest tagged tight end at the moment. I'm perfectly fine, just a complete fade all over the place. Like, I'm gonna play Ingram and Doyle in cash, and I would much rather have Rudolph in a GPP. I would much rather have Henry. I have really no interest in Brait at all. Jeff, are you interested in Brait? Or
I'm a big Brait fan, but I'm gonna defend your case here by the quarterback tight end dynamic is a very special one and a reliable one. So I don't want to avoid it here because they're going to the backup here. But you can't expect it to carry over because it's now a different quarterback, in my opinion.
Right.
So all the success that Brait has had, it wouldn't shock me if he keeps it going because I really like him and I own him in a couple season-long leagues and he's very reliable. But a lot of, in my opinion, a nice percentage of that kind of gets lost without the guy that's counted on him so much. I don't follow the Bucs that closely. I don't know who Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to lean on in the moments here that it seemed like Jameis leaned on Brait and many of those times. So I'll throw a bit of cold water with you on Brait.
Yeah, and although I'm just thinking now the Harvard to Harvard connection, so that's going to be troubling for my narrative brain to wrap around the fade here. But Jimmy,
just Harvard to Alabama, then the other tight end.
There you go. Jimmy, are you on Brait at all this week?
Listen, there's a great case to be made for Brait, and he sees a lot of red zone looks. He's a giant red zone target. The offense and Dirk Cutter are obviously comfortable with him, as was Jameis, like Jeff said. But I just get the feeling that people have forgotten about O.J. Howard again. And the last time everybody forgot about O.J. Howard, he just kind of blew up with a couple of touchdowns. And that's sort of the way O.J. Howard works in general. I mean, it was kind of the same way at Alabama. He wasn't heavily used until all of a sudden everybody forgot that they have a really elite receiving physical freak tight end. for all the reasons Jeff just said, I don't really want the exposure to Brate. We could easily see the targets leave him. Humphreys could get all the targets. OJ Howard could, take more of a passing role. Who knows? Maybe they get Charles Sims more involved coming out of the backfield, and that takes some targets away from Brate. But either way, I think that for the 20% ownership that he's projected at right now, I'll take the other side of Brate and just be off of the chalk tight end.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Steve always yells at me because I always skip over defenses. You want to give me like one defense take, Jeff, and we can move into some stacks and get out of here?
One defense, I guess because they're just really cheap, I want to say. That's how I'll play it. The Jets? Do anything for anyone?
All right. I'm good with that. Why not? 2,800. I can get on board with that. They can get after Fitzpatrick a couple times and pay off. I'm all right.
Yeah, they like to dance, so
Dude, that fucking hashtag with Jets dance to anything is just the greatest thing. Like, if you just scroll through that, there's nothing better than seeing that like clip with the Charlie Brown Christmas music behind it. It made me very happy the other day. Jimmy, how about you? Any defense that's really sticking out to you?
Yeah, there's three, and I'll give them to you quick. Pittsburgh, they have the potential to to have like a two turnover touchdown type of game here. The LA Rams against the Statue Savage, with the Aaron Donald in the middle, he's going to get after it. I think they could force several turnovers and get into the box. And the other one is where did they go? Oh, it's the Bears, man. It's Brett Hundley, it's the Bears, they're Soldier Field. Those are the three defenses I'm just going to be rotating in and out, and I'll let everybody else play the others.
Yeah, I'm fully with you on the Rams. I think there's a legitimate chance that we see TJ Yates this week. He took some of the first team reps, and they're just clearly they have no interest in playing Tom Savage any longer than they have to. So I think that's an interesting play. So why don't we hit some stacks and call it a night, gentlemen? Jeff, why don't you give me a couple of your favorites? I think we can assume that Atlanta is one of them.
Yeah, Atlanta, and in many ways, I guess Detroit, whether it be with Stafford and a couple of those receivers. You even threw Ebron out there. So I talked about Atlanta a lot, and Pittsburgh is kind of obvious. So Detroit against the Browns, I guess that's kind of an easy one too. But the way Stafford's been spreading the ball around, I expect this to be the Detroit Lions solving their red zone problems in a big way on Sunday.
How about you, Jimmy?
I really like the Stafford to Ebron contrarian stack. The other stack I really like in that game that I don't think anyone's really going to be on is Stafford to Riddick. If we think that the Amir Abdullah fumbles and his general ineffectiveness prompt them to give Theo some more touches out of the backfield and to get away from the nasty pass rush or the nasty run stopping in the middle for Cleveland, which is about the only thing they do well, then I think that makes some sense with Stafford to Theo. It's going to be really low owned, and I think it has a lot of upside. So I think if you're staying in that game, that's interesting to me. I do like the Atlanta stacks, your conventional, Julio and Matt Ryan. I think Matt Ryan and Sanu is an interesting stack, especially if we find out Julio is increasingly limited throughout the rest of the week. I do like that stack. I like Dak to Butler. Man, there's stacks everywhere this week, and I think you can comfortably land on any of them you feel confident in, and it's not going to be a really heavily owned stack. I mean, I hear people talking about AJ Green and Andy Dalton. I don't like the stack. I'd rather just play Green because Dalton sucks. But I think you can go almost anywhere in stacks this weekend. If you like it, just freaking play it, man.
Yeah, I think the only two that I will that I'll throw in there as well. I think Fitzpatrick to Humphreys is probably my favorite just because of the relief that it gives you salary wise. I think you can just really, $8K for a quarterback wide receiver stack is pretty tempting no matter how you.
Then you can have Bell and Gurley.
Exactly. So you can throw that in there. You can go with those 5 to 4K wide receivers that we talked about being comfortable with before. and just print money. Right? That's the name of the game. So
I think maybe the most important stack you can make this week is stacking Bell and Brown. While it's not a quarterback to pass catcher stack, I think those two guys alone have the highest projected floors and ceilings in general. I think if you can find a way to stack the two of them and round out the rest of your lineup, that could be money in GPPs this week.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, guys. I really appreciate it. As always, if you're listening to this, you can head over to bogeyfreedfs.com and you can check out my articles. No game-by-game breakdown this week. I've decided that I will leave that to Evan Silva, who is much smarter than I am, and just crank out a bunch of different articles with stacks and cash plays and GPPs and everything else. So it was just way too much time. Like, it was 4,000 words last week. I have no interest in doing that again. But thanks again, Jimmy, as always, for coming on pretty much whenever I ask you to, which I think you're like, I don't know, 7th appearance, and nobody else has more than 2. So congrats if that counts for anything. That's great. As always, you can find him on Twitter at DFS Jimmy. And Jeff, thanks for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. You were one of the guys, I said it on Twitter before. I was like just randomly sending out DMs, and I was like, I couldn't believe you actually said yes. So thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
No worries. I don't know. I don't know. You must assume that I'm a lot busier than I lead or something. No, it was good times.
You're just highly regarded in the industry, man. It was actually a blast to be on the podcast with you. I always enjoy your shows with Mayo, and just that's why, man. You're the GOAT.
Yeah, awesome. Too kind. I'm certainly not, but I appreciate that, and yeah, thanks for those kind words.
Absolutely, man. Well, good luck to everybody listening, and we'll talk soon. See you.